Hi, this is Karin from the Huntley Area Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to do melt and pour soap making, which is the easiest kind of soap making that you can do. So if you're ready to get started, I will show you our list of supplies. Here are all of the supplies that you're going to need to make our melt and pour soap. The first and most important ingredient is our soap base. This is a pre-made soap base that somebody else has already constructed for you, and that's what we're going to melt down and then mix with other ingredients to create our own soaps. So I got all of my soap bases from a company called brambleberry.com. They have all kinds of different soap making supplies and a nice variety. Just to give you an idea of what was available through their website, um, as far as soap bases go, they had a clear soap base, a white one, which is opaque, a hemp soap base, also goat's milk, aloe vera, honey, and olive oil. I think they also had a shea butter one too. So lots of different possibilities there. You can also pick these things up from a craft supply store, like I said too. You will also need some kind of soap mold, and that could just be something sort of flexible so that you can get your soap out of it once it's set. I like to use those silicone molds, and they come in all kinds of different shapes, and you can get them on the cheap if you pick up like some of the holiday design ones or seasonal ones after they've gone on sale. So those are really nice. Or you can use some kind of flexible plastic too, is also good. You can also buy specially designed soap molds or use ones that are designed for candles, candle making, or candy making. If you want to have a fragrance added to your soap, you can pick that up too. I've used essential oils before, but they also sell special soap fragrances specifically for soaps. My words of wisdom on those are to, if you can't smell it in person, to order the smallest size available, because you don't want to be stuck with a huge container of fragrance that you don't like. That's happened to me before. Some kind of dye for your soap. They make special soap dyes. In a pinch, you can use food coloring if you have that around. If you want to add herbs or other kinds of ingredients to your soap, I've used lavender and oatmeal and things like that. Check out your spices and your herbs, or if you have herbal tea, some of those things might be good or fun to add to soap. Rose petals or other flower parts too might be fun. You're going to need a way to heat your soap up so that it's a liquid and not a solid. So you're going to have to either use the stovetop or a microwave. If you're using the stovetop, you're going to want to set up a double boiler, which is just one pot where you're going to boil some water, and then a container that you can set inside of that. I'm going to use a metal coffee can to melt my soap in, and that way your soap isn't in direct contact with the water or with the heat source. You don't want your soap to boil, but the water around it can boil to melt it and to keep it warm. If you're using a microwave, you're going to want to put your soap base into a microwave safe container. If you're doing it in small batches, I've used like paper cups and put a small amount of the soap base in there, and then microwaved it for maybe 10 seconds. You won't need a whole lot of time to liquefy it. And my words of advice are to err on the side of caution and do it for a shorter time than you think it's going to need, and then you can always add a few more seconds afterwards. It melts really fast though. If you're doing a larger batch of the soap base in the microwave, you might need a larger container. Just make sure that it's microwave safe and only put it in for maybe 20 seconds or so. And again, err on the side of less time than more. You'll need something to mix your soap with, especially if you're adding other ingredients to it. So a spoon or maybe a popsicle stick or a chopstick, something that you can use to mix it. The great thing about soap making is that the cleanup is really easy. All of these, since you're making soap, all of these ingredients will just wash right out. The only thing you really have to be careful about is the dye, because if you get that on your clothing, it can be hard to get out. So here's our soap making base. These are a bunch of different bases that I used the last time that I made soap. So they're already cut up into small pieces, as you can see. Usually when you get your soap base, it'll be in 1 or 3 pound pieces, so considerably bigger, and you will probably want to cut it up like this so that it melts faster, but that can be time consuming and hard on your hands too, so you can try and melt it as one piece. It might just take a little bit longer in a double boiler. I would not try microwaving a big piece all at once. It could get a little charred. So these are all of my soap base pieces, and I'm going to put them into this coffee can here, and then put that on the stove in my pot. They're going into the can. And you can see that some of them are more transparent, like that one, and some of them are opaque. And that's going to affect how your dye looks in them if you're making your soap a different color and you're adding some dye to it. We'll see what happens with this since I'm just mixing everything together. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm just going to stick that in this pot of water that I have on the stove here. We'll just put it in the center there. And then the water is going to boil around this. We don't actually want the soap to boil, but we will turn on the stove and make sure that heat's not too high. And then wait a few minutes for this to liquefy. While we're waiting for our soap to cook up, I'm going to show you some of the molds that I have that I'm going to use to make my soap tonight. There's lots of fun patterns and designs. I actually got these fish and starfish from IKEA for about 99 cents each. This I inherited from a friend of mine who was also making soap and already had one of these molds. And this was a cupcake mold that I bought a long time ago, and I never make cupcakes with it, but I do often make heart-shaped soaps. You can also use these miniature plastic cups. If you are doing like a soap event and you want people to be able to take their soap home with them, maybe before it's properly set, these come with lids, and you can just have the soap set right inside of the little plastic cup and put a lid on it and take it with you without worrying that it's going to spill or get damaged. And then these I ordered from Brambleberry, and they're another kind of soap mold, and they're nice because they have a lid too which will close, so you can protect your soap while it's setting. So those are some options. I've also used cardboard jewelry boxes before too, just so that people could take the soap with them, because we were doing a class and I wanted portability to be a feature. With the cardboard, it kind of stuck to the soap, but you could peel it off, and if you washed the soap a little bit afterwards, then there was no cardboard residue left. It wasn't the ideal solution, but if that's all you have around your house, go for it. Try it out and see. I think you'll be happy with your soap no matter what you use as the mold. Just make sure, like I said, that it's something that's slightly flexible so that you can pop your soap out without too many problems. You don't want it to have to live in its mold forever. As far as fragrances go, I have a lot of options because I've been making soap for a few years now, and I keep finding interesting scents to try. If you have essential oils at home, you could use those. I have a few here. There's a clove bud, a lemon, a peppermint. Peppermint's actually my favorite scent, so I will probably use that. I also like citrusy scents, so lemon would be good too. And then these are some other fragrances that I got from Brambleberry. So there's an orange mix. That one's hard to tell. There's an orange Valencia, a ginger ale, which doesn't really smell anything like ginger ale. There's an almond, another lemon, another almond, lime. There's a scent called Energy, which is a combination of several different things. There's a cinnamon sugar, plumeria. That was a whole lot stronger than I thought it was going to be. So like I said, don't get the big bottle, get a small one if you want to try something out, if you can't smell it in person. So those are some of our options for scents. Hopefully you have something around your house. On the Brambleberry labels, they will also tell you what it's good for. Like in soap, it says specifically it behaves well in cold process and it will discolor to a dark brown. So if you were to use this cinnamon sugar one in a cold process soap, it might cause your soap to turn brown. So you'd want to be aware of that. I don't know how it behaves in our melt and pour soap. We can try it out and see. But those notations are nice to have if you want your soap to be a certain color and you're concerned about how the fragrance might affect it or how other dyes might affect it. So our soap base is starting to melt here. You can kind of hear it boiling and rattling around in there, so I turn the heat down a little bit because it doesn't need to shake, rattle, and roll right off the stove. And it looks like everything's starting to liquefy pretty nicely. So soon this will be ready for us to pour out and mix our ingredients into. I love soap making because it's like making potions and you can kind of mix all kinds of things together and see what you get. So what else can you put in your soap? All kinds of things. These are just a few suggestions that I have around my house. Cinnamon can be nice, just for the smell, and it can also color your soap. Be careful because it can, if you're allergic to it, it can be harsh on your skin. Rosemary is often paired with mint, so maybe I'll mix that with my peppermint scent. I have some herbs that I ordered I have pet rabbits, and I ordered them some herbs recently, and I got them rose petals and chamomile flowers, so I think those would be nice in a soap. If you don't have rabbits and don't have these things around, don't worry about it. You can use whatever you have on hand. I also had ordered during my last soap making experience this dried lavender flowers, and those smell really nice, so you might not even need to add much of a fragrance to your soap if you were to use those. And then I also have some old-fashioned organic oats, so oatmeal is something nice to add to your soap as well. And if you have herbal tea around, you get a bunch of different herbs that you can try in your soaps. Don't be afraid to experiment. Just be certain that you're not allergic to anything that you're putting into your soaps. So I mentioned that there are dyes that you can use to get your soaps to be a certain color. And I have ordered a few. These are super concentrated dyes from Brambleberry. There is a royal purple, an emerald green, there we go, emerald, a brilliant blue, and then this one is a red. So these need to be diluted with some water before you use them. And you can also try, if this is something you have around your house, just using some food coloring instead. I think I'm going to try the food coloring and I'm going to use a red, but I'm going to use that in the second layer of the rose petal soap, so I don't have to get that ready just yet. So I'm waiting for that to set. So our soap base is pretty much melted. I think there's just a little chunk left in here that has to liquefy. So we are going to prep one of the soap molds now for our soap to set in. I'm going to use this heart-shaped one. I'm fond of it. One thing you want to do to prep your soap mold, if you have this at your house, is to take a little spritz of rubbing alcohol, and this will help the soap release more easily from the mold. So you're just going to spray on the inside of the mold. I'm actually not sure how many of these the soap is going to fill, so I'll just prep them all. And then the rubbing alcohol dries pretty quickly, so you should be ready to put your soap in just after you've sprayed them. So for one of my soaps, I'm going to use these rose petals, and I would like them to be on the bottom or the top of the soap, depending on how I turn it. So I'm just going to put them in the mold to start with in one of these sections, and I'm going to do the same with the chamomile flowers in another one. One of the things you can do with the melt and pour soap making is to put things in layers. So if I wanted to have a layer of the rose petals and then a layer of the chamomile, I could pour some soap in now and then let that set part way, and then pour put the other layer of flowers on, and then pour another layer of soap, and then you'll get kind of a nice effect with that. So I'm going to reserve some of these and maybe try that with the two floral ones. I do want to do an oatmeal soap too, so I'm going to take some of the oatmeal out and put it in one of the other parts of the mold. And I think with I'm going to do rosemary and lavender, but I think I'm going to do those within the soap. So I'm going to mix them in once I'm ready to pour. So I'm going to bring the mold over here closer to the stove, and then get a spoon so that I can start pouring my soap into here. Or maybe I'll just pick up the, I think I'll just pick up the can, but I need to get an oven mitt to protect myself from the heat here, so let's pause for just a moment. Okay, I turned the heat off on the stove because our soap base is all melted now. We'll just give that a final stir. And hopefully the water will stay hot enough to keep this liquid while we're working with it. If not, we can turn the stove back on. And I've got a towel here so that I can lift up my can and hopefully not scald myself. And since the can's a little bit wet, I'm going to want to let that drip off there. I'll set it down for a second and get a better grip on it. Okay, here we go. Alright, so for the rose petal soap, I'm going to pour in some of the soap mixture there. Looks like some of those are floating. Oh well, we'll let that set a little bit, and then I will add something in the next layer and then pour the rest of the soap on. We're going to do the same with the chamomile flowers. Oh, looks like I went almost to the top on that one. And I'm going to go all the way to the top with the oatmeal one. And then we'll use some of the rest of the soap for that. Let's see, I don't have a whole lot left. So I'm going to, let's see, there's about maybe enough for one more of these. Oops, try and not get the towel in there. Alright, I'll set that down for a second and turn this a little bit so I can get to one of those open spaces. Okay, and now I'll never catch the can again. Ha, got it. Alright, and so I'll put some in there. And then I think I've got just enough left to fill in that rose petal heart. So I'm going to pop the can back in the hot water bath for now, and we'll mix in some fragrances and dyes perhaps here. Okay, I'm going to focus on the oatmeal soap, which is this one right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of cinnamon to it. So that's in here, so I'm just going to get a little pinch of that. Sprinkle that in there. So it's just going to have a little bit of cinnamon freckles once I mix that around. And then I have this clove bud essential oil, and I'm just going to put a few drops in, maybe 3. It's kind of a strong oil. I don't know how well it will hold up in a soap, but we'll find out. And that smells pretty nice. And is that all that I wanted to put in there? Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to do with that one. Okay, and then I need to stir that up a little bit. And you can see it's already starting to set. There's a little skin on the soap there. So that's just mixing the cinnamon around a bit, and it looks like most of the oatmeal is staying at the bottom of the soap, so that's good. Okay. If your soap, you can see there's some tiny bubbles right around the edges here. If your soap is starting to do that, you can take your alcohol spray, if you've got that, the rubbing alcohol, and just spray the top of the soap. Not a lot, but it should make those bubbles go away. So that was just like 3 little spritzes there. Okay, so for this little soap over here in the corner, I added some rosemary and also some peppermint oil to it. For some reason I wasn't filming when I did that. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to add a little bit more and show you again. So here's our rosemary, and you just need a little pinch of it. And this one's starting to set already because it's been sitting here for a while. So I can probably just press that into the soap a little bit with my finger, and then add a little bit more of this peppermint oil, just a few drops. I really like mint, so that's not going to be a problem. And then I'm just going to mix it up here. You can see that it's still liquid on the inside, it's just starting to set on the outside. So I've got a little bit of time. Okay, so that one is all ready to go. And then I also missed filming this one on the end here. And this one I added some orange oil, or some orange fragrance, and some lemon fragrance too. And I was considering adding a little bit of the yellow food coloring that I have, but the orange fragrance already has a slightly orangey yellowy tinge to it, so you can see it in comparison to the cinnamon clove soap over here, that it's definitely a little bit more yellow. So I don't think I really need any more color in that one. With these fragrances that I got from Brambleberry, if you have a bottle like this which doesn't have that drop top like some of the essential oils do, so that you can easily control how much fragrance is coming out, you will probably want to have an eyedropper or a pipette like this in order to add fragrances so that you can have that control. So I'll just put a few more drops of the orange fragrance in here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Some of the citrus scents, you require a lot more of the fragrance be used in order for it to stick around over the course of the soap's life. So you might want to add some and keep track of how much you needed for your soaps, so that if you need to create, or you want to create this particular combination again, you can do that pretty easily. And then I'm going to stir that up a little bit. And this one is also starting to set, you can see. So it's still hot on the inside. It's like a little lava cake. But now it's got a little bit more fragrance. Writing down the ingredients of all the things that you put in your soaps, especially if you're making a variety like we're doing here, is a good idea. That way you'll remember what's in everything. And if you give a soap away as a gift to somebody, they make really nice gifts. You can tell them what's in their soap. That way if they have any allergies, they'll be aware of that. Or if they really like the combination, they can say, hey, can you make me one of those chamomile orange flavored soaps, orange scented soaps in the future. So I always think it's a good idea to write down the ingredients so that I remember and I can tell other people what went into the soaps that I'm giving them. I did have to turn the stove back on because our remaining soap was getting a little skin on it and wasn't staying as liquid as I wanted it to. But now it looks like we're in a good place so that we can finish up our rose petal soap here, and then if I have any left, I'll put some more in the chamomile one. I was going to add a little bit of red food coloring, so we'll see how that works. Okay, looks like that's all the food coloring I have, so that's going to have to be enough. And then I'll just mix that up a little bit. turns out the top of this can is not really that hot. Okay, looks kind of pink, but I think we're good. Okay, so I'll turn off the stove now, and ooh, there's some steam. Okay, so be careful of the steam. I would recommend using the towel or a oven mitt to take this off because that was a little warm for me. But I'm going to swish it around a little bit more just to get the last bit of that food coloring mixed in. And then we'll come over here to our soap and we'll pour that in. Okay, then I'm also going to pour some on top of the chamomile one since I have a little bit extra. And the nice thing about soap is like that looks really messy, but it's soap, so it's just going to wash right out of there, and then I'll be able to use this jar again for future soap making projects. So I'll put that aside for a moment. I still have a few of these herbs left over, so I'm just going to sprinkle them on the bottom here. And then press them in a little bit so that they get some of that soap to help make them stay. Perfect. So now these soaps are going to have to rest for a little while and set up so that they're not liquidy anymore, and that can take with a soap of this size, it can take about 30 minutes to an hour. If you want to speed that process along a little bit, you could put them in the fridge or the freezer, and then that would make them set up a whole lot faster because they'd have the extra cool to move them along. So I'm going to let them set up, and then I'll show you what the final product looks like. The soaps have been chilling in the fridge for the past hour, so I think we're ready to do the big soap reveal and see how they all came out. So let's pop them out of the molds here and see what we got. Woo! There's our oatmeal cinnamon clove soap. Looking good. Here's the chamomile orange or lemon, I forget what I put in it. Oh, and it looks like the chamomile did kind of stick around the bottom here. If your soap has these little flakes from the mold, you can just brush those off with your finger or put a little water on your finger, and then that'll take them right off. So you can have smooth edges. And here's our rose petal one. I hope you're set. This one's staying in the mold. Ooh. There we go. Oh, nice. Okay, so you can see all the lines you got here. I like how that turned out. And then all of these petals. This could be your exfoliant soap because this is kind of scratchy. A gardener's soap, perhaps. Okay, and then we have the citrusy one with the lemon and the orange fragrance. Maybe I'll try it this way. Push from the back. There we go. So that's interesting. It looks like most of the yellow coloring ended up on one side of it, and then the rest of it is pretty white. It smells really nice though. And then this is the rosemary mint one. Come on out. Oh yeah. And the rosemary, even though I mixed it all the way through, you can't even really see it on this side that was at the bottom of the mold. Most of it stayed at the top, or stayed at the bottom of this. It did not go to the top right here. Oh, I'm confused about the sides of my soaps, but they turned out really nice. I'm happy with these. I'll have to write down my recipes so that when they find new homes, people will know what they're getting. I hope your soaps turn out just as nice. So thanks for making melt and pour soap with me today. I hope you had a good time and learned something new. If you like this technique, you can do all kinds of amazing things with it, and there are so many different kinds of soaps that you can make. If you want to progress beyond melt and pour soap, there are hot and cold process soaps that you can make, which involve a little bit more chemistry and time in getting them to make those chemical reactions happen. But you have more control of the ingredients in those soaps too. You're not relying on a soap base that somebody else has made. So those are other things that you can explore. The Huntley Area Public Library has lots of resources, both online, virtual resources, and also at the library for soap making and other kinds of craft projects like that. So I will create a list for you that you can access, and hopefully those will give you some other ideas too. For more fun craft ideas and other activities at the Huntley Library, please check out our website, www.huntleylibrary.org. Thanks.